Question 1. Which approach would be most effective for optimizing the performance of an XPage application that frequently displays and manipulates large datasets, minimizing client-side processing and server load? Option A. Relying on client-side JavaScript to fetch all necessary data and then process it directly within the browser. Option B. Utilizing extensive server-side Java beans for all data manipulation, without considering caching or optimization strategies. Option C. Implementing server-side JavaScript within computed fields or computed properties to perform data aggregation and transformations before rendering. Option D. Employing a client-side data grid component that handles all data fetching and processing, abstracting away server-side logic. Correct answer is C. Implementing server-side JavaScript within computed fields or computed properties to perform data aggregation and transformations before rendering. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in application development: optimizing performance without compromising data integrity or user experience. Developers must balance the need for speed with the inherent complexities of data retrieval and processing within the XPage's framework. The challenge lies in identifying the most efficient method for handling large datasets and complex logic, ensuring that the application remains responsive and scalable. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that aligns with best practices for XPage's development and adheres to any implicit performance expectations of the end users and the underlying Domino infrastructure. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it leverages the inherent capabilities of the XPage's framework for efficient data handling. By utilizing server-side JavaScript, SSJS, within computed fields or computed properties, developers can perform data transformations and aggregations directly on the server. This minimizes the amount of data transferred to the client and reduces the processing load on the browser, leading to faster load times and a more responsive user interface. This method is also generally more maintainable and easier to debug than client-side manipulation of large datasets. Adherence to this approach ensures that the application is built on a solid foundation of performance optimization techniques recognized within the IBM Lotus Domino development community. An incorrect approach that relies heavily on client-side JavaScript to process large datasets retrieved from the server would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. From a performance perspective, it would lead to a degraded user experience, potentially violating implicit service-level agreements or user expectations for application responsiveness. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence in optimizing the application, which could lead to increased infrastructure costs for the client due to prolonged server connections or higher resource utilization. Furthermore, if the application is intended for regulated industries, such performance issues could indirectly impact compliance by hindering timely access to critical information. Another incorrect approach, involving excessive use of server-side Java beans for complex data manipulation without proper caching or optimization, could also lead to performance bottlenecks. While server-side Java can be powerful, inefficiently written or unoptimized code can consume significant server resources, impacting the performance of other applications on the same Domino server. This could lead to a breach of service-level agreements and potentially violate infrastructure usage policies. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the XPage's architecture and its performance characteristics. Developers should first identify the performance bottlenecks through profiling and testing. Then, they should evaluate different optimization strategies, considering the trade-offs between client-side and server-side processing, the complexity of the logic, and the size of the data involved. Prioritizing server-side processing for data-intensive operations, utilizing efficient data retrieval methods, and implementing appropriate caching mechanisms are key components of this decision-making framework. Consulting XPage's best practices and community recommendations is also crucial. Question 2. The review process indicates that the performance of a critical XPage application is suboptimal. To address this, which of the following approaches to process optimization would be considered the most professionally sound and effective for developing advanced XPage designs within the IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2 environment? Option A. Immediately implement the most recently introduced advanced XPage features and design patterns, assuming they will inherently improve performance across the application. Option B. Rely on general web development optimization strategies and best practices without specific analysis of the Domino 8. 5. 2 XPage environment. Option C. Systematically profile the XPage application to identify specific performance bottlenecks and then apply targeted advanced XPage design techniques to address those identified areas. Option D. Make broad, sweeping changes to the XPage code and data sources based on assumptions about where performance issues might exist, without prior profiling or testing. The correct answer is C. Systematically profile the XPage application to identify specific performance bottlenecks and then apply targeted advanced XPage design techniques to address those identified areas. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because optimizing process efficiency in XPage development, particularly with advanced techniques, requires a delicate balance between performance gains and maintainability, while adhering to established development best practices. The core challenge lies in identifying and implementing optimizations that yield tangible benefits without introducing undue complexity or technical debt that could hinder future development or support. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and data-driven methodology for process optimization. This involves profiling the XPage application to identify specific performance bottlenecks, such as inefficient data retrieval, excessive rendering cycles, or poorly optimized JavaScript. By targeting these identified areas with appropriate advanced XPage design techniques, such as judicious use of computed fields, efficient view rendering, and optimized data source configurations, developers can achieve measurable improvements. This aligns with professional standards of delivering robust, performant, and maintainable applications. The focus on understanding the underlying mechanisms of XPages and the Domino environment ensures that optimizations are not superficial but address root causes. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on implementing the latest advanced XPage features without prior analysis is professionally unacceptable. This is because it risks introducing complexity and potential performance regressions without a clear understanding of their impact. It bypasses the critical step of identifying actual bottlenecks, leading to wasted development effort and potentially creating new problems. This approach lacks the rigor and discipline expected of professional developers, potentially violating implicit ethical obligations to deliver quality and efficient solutions. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or best practices from unrelated platforms or older versions of Domino is also professionally flawed. This can lead to the adoption of techniques that are either irrelevant or detrimental in the context of IBM Lotus Domino 8. 5. 2 XPages. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and an unwillingness to engage with the specific technical environment, potentially leading to suboptimal or even harmful implementations. This can be seen as a failure to uphold professional standards of competence and due care. A further incorrect approach that involves premature optimization, making changes without concrete evidence of a problem, is also professionally unsound. This can lead to unnecessary code changes, increased complexity, and a higher risk of introducing bugs. It deviates from a disciplined development process and can negatively impact the overall project timeline and quality. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the requirements and identify potential areas for improvement. 2. Profile the application to gather objective data on performance. 3. Analyze the profiling data to pinpoint specific bottlenecks. 4. Research and select appropriate advanced XPage design techniques to address identified bottlenecks. 5. Implement optimizations incrementally and test thoroughly. 6. Reprofile and measure the impact of optimizations. 7. Document all changes and their rationale. This iterative and data-driven process ensures that optimizations are effective, maintainable, and aligned with professional standards. Question 3. The analysis reveals that a key requirement for an advanced XPage application is to display a large, frequently updated dataset to users in a dynamic and interactive manner. The development team is considering different strategies for fetching and rendering this data to ensure optimal application performance and a seamless user experience. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of efficient XPage design for handling such scenarios? Option A. Rely on extensive server-side rendering of all data elements, including complex calculations and formatting, directly within the XPage server-side logic before sending the complete HTML to the client. Option B. Utilize a combination of client-side data fetching via AJAX calls for each individual data record as it becomes visible to the user, without any server-side aggregation or caching. Option C. Implement server-side data retrieval mechanisms, such as computed fields or data sources, to fetch the necessary data, and then utilize client-side rendering techniques within XPages to display and interact with this data efficiently. Option D. Load the entire dataset directly into a client-side Java script variable upon page load, and then use JavaScript to dynamically render and manipulate the data within the XPage. Correct answer is C. Implement server-side data retrieval mechanisms, such as computed fields or data sources, to fetch the necessary data, and then utilize client-side rendering techniques within XPages to display and interact with this data efficiently. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in advanced XPage development, managing complex data interactions and user experience while adhering to performance best practices. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rich, dynamic interfaces with the potential for performance degradation, especially in enterprise environments where data volumes can be significant. Developers must make informed decisions about how data is fetched and rendered to ensure a responsive and efficient application. The correct approach, which involves judicious use of server-side data retrieval and client-side rendering techniques, represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the core principles of efficient XPage design. By fetching data on the server and then rendering it on the client, developers minimize the number of round trips to the server and reduce the processing load on the client. This aligns with the implicit guidelines for developing robust and scalable applications within the Lotus Domino framework, prioritizing performance and user experience. This method ensures that the application remains responsive even with large datasets, a critical factor for user adoption and productivity. An incorrect approach that relies heavily on client-side data manipulation or excessive server-side rendering without optimization can lead to significant performance issues. For instance, attempting to load all data client-side without proper pagination or filtering would overwhelm the browser and lead to unacceptably slow load times and potential crashes. This is professionally unacceptable as it directly impacts the usability and effectiveness of the application, potentially leading to user frustration and a failure to meet business requirements. Another incorrect approach might involve inefficient server-side data retrieval, such as repeatedly querying the database within a loop without caching or batching, which would place an undue burden on the Domino server, impacting overall application performance and stability for all users. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of performance optimization techniques crucial for enterprise-level application development. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the data requirements, user interaction patterns, and the underlying Domino architecture. Developers should prioritize strategies that minimize server load and client-side processing. This includes carefully considering when to use server-side data sources versus client-side data, implementing effective data caching mechanisms, and leveraging XPage components that are optimized for performance. A proactive approach to performance testing and profiling throughout the development lifecycle is essential to identify and address potential bottlenecks before they impact the end-user experience. Question 4. Operational review demonstrates that stakeholders are requesting advanced client-side interactivity for an existing IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2 application, specifically to enhance user experience and streamline data entry workflows. The development team is considering several approaches to implement these enhancements, balancing the desire for sophisticated UI elements with the need for application stability and security. Which approach best aligns with the principles of advanced XPage design and professional development practices within this environment? Option A. Re-architect the application to rely exclusively on server-side logic for all user interactions, thereby avoiding any client-side scripting and its associated complexities. Option B. Leverage the integrated Dojo toolkit and its components within XPages to implement client-side logic and advanced UI patterns, ensuring adherence to XPage's best practices for scripting and event handling. Option C. Implement custom JavaScript directly within XPage's components, focusing on achieving the desired visual effects and immediate functionality without extensive integration testing or security audits. Option D. Integrate unvetted third-party JavaScript libraries that offer the requested UI features, assuming they will seamlessly function within the XPage's environment and address the interactivity requirements. Correct answer is C. Implement custom JavaScript directly within XPage's components, focusing on achieving the desired visual effects and immediate functionality without extensive integration testing or security audits. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in application development, balancing the need for advanced user interface features with the constraints of an older but still supported technology stack. The core difficulty lies in the potential for custom JavaScript to introduce security vulnerabilities or performance degradation if not implemented with extreme care and adherence to best practices. Stakeholders, particularly those focused on user experience and efficiency, may push for cutting-edge solutions, while IT governance and security teams will prioritize stability and compliance. The challenge is to satisfy diverse stakeholder needs without compromising the integrity or maintainability of the application, especially within the context of the C2040-922 exam's focus on advanced XPage design. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the built-in capabilities of XPages and its associated libraries for client-side logic, such as Dojo. This aligns with best professional practice because it utilizes the framework's intended mechanisms for advanced UI interactions. Dojo, being a well-established JavaScript toolkit integrated with XPages, provides a robust and secure foundation for implementing complex client-side behaviors. Using Dojo components and patterns ensures that the code is more likely to be well-tested, performant, and less prone to common JavaScript pitfalls that could lead to security breaches or application instability. This approach prioritizes maintainability and reduces the risk of introducing unforeseen issues, which is crucial for long-term application health and aligns with the principles of responsible software development within the specified IBM Lotus Domino 8. 5. 2. Environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing custom JavaScript directly within XPages without leveraging the integrated Dojo toolkit or adhering to strict security coding standards presents significant regulatory and ethical failures. Such an approach bypasses the framework's built-in security checks and optimizations, increasing the risk of cross-site scripting XSS, vulnerabilities, data leakage, and performance bottlenecks. This directly contravenes the implicit expectation of developing secure and robust applications, which is a fundamental ethical responsibility for developers. Furthermore, it can lead to non-compliance with internal IT policies and potentially external data protection regulations if sensitive information is mishandled. Introducing complex, unvetted third-party JavaScript libraries without thorough security audits and integration testing is another professionally unacceptable approach. While these libraries might offer desired functionality, they can introduce unknown vulnerabilities, conflicts with existing XPages components, and obscure debugging processes. This lack of due diligence creates an unacceptable risk to application security and stability, failing to uphold the professional duty to deliver reliable and secure software. Relying solely on server-side logic to simulate client-side interactivity, even if it avoids direct JavaScript, is inefficient and detrimental to user experience. This approach would lead to excessive server load, slower response times, and a clunky user interface, failing to meet the stakeholders' desire for advanced UI features. While it might appear to avoid JavaScript-related risks, it creates different, equally significant problems related to performance and usability, demonstrating a failure to understand and address the core requirements of advanced XPage design. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this scenario by first understanding the specific requirements for advanced UI features, and then evaluating how these can be best achieved within the XPages framework. This involves consulting the XPages documentation and best practices for client-side scripting, particularly regarding the use of Dojo. A risk assessment should be conducted for any proposed solution, considering security, performance, and maintainability, prioritizing solutions that leverage the framework's integrated tools and adhere to established security patterns is paramount. When considering external libraries or custom code, a rigorous review and testing process is essential. The decision-making process should always weigh the benefits of new features against the potential risks and ensure that the chosen approach aligns with the organization's security policies and the principles of professional software development. Question 5. Governance review demonstrates that a critical IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2 application, developed using advanced XPage design, is experiencing performance issues and occasional data inconsistencies. Stakeholders are pressuring the development team to immediately implement several new, complex user interface features to enhance user experience, despite the underlying stability concerns. Which approach best balances stakeholder demands with the imperative of maintaining application integrity and security? Option A. Immediately deploy a new version of the application with all requested user interface features, assuming that the underlying data inconsistencies will resolve themselves with increased usage. Option B. Implement the new user interface features first, as requested by stakeholders, and address the performance and data inconsistency issues in a subsequent maintenance release. Option C. Prioritize the development and thorough testing of robust data validation and security mechanisms for the existing application functionality, followed by a phased integration of the new user interface features. Option D. Focus solely on optimizing the XPage rendering performance, as this is likely the root cause of the reported issues, and defer all new feature development until performance is satisfactory. The correct answer is B. Implement the new user interface features first, as requested by stakeholders, and address the performance and data inconsistency issues in a subsequent maintenance release. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in application development where the need for rapid feature deployment clashes with the imperative of maintaining data integrity and security, especially within the context of advanced XPage design in IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2. The challenge lies in balancing the stakeholders' desire for immediate functionality with the developer's responsibility to implement robust, secure, and compliant solutions. Pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise long-term maintainability, security, and adherence to best practices, which are implicitly governed by the principles of good software engineering and data handling expected within any enterprise environment, even without explicit mention of specific external regulations for this exam. The advanced XPage design aspect implies a need for sophisticated handling of data, user interaction, and potentially sensitive information, further amplifying the risks associated with hasty implementation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased implementation strategy that prioritizes core functionality and robust data validation before introducing more complex, potentially less critical features. This aligns with best professional practices in software development, which advocate for iterative development, thorough testing, and a focus on foundational integrity. By implementing robust data validation and security measures at the outset, the application is built on a solid foundation, minimizing the risk of data corruption, unauthorized access, or performance degradation. This approach ensures that the core business logic is sound and secure, making subsequent additions of advanced features more manageable and less prone to introducing new vulnerabilities. This aligns with the implicit expectation of responsible application development that safeguards data and user experience, which are paramount in any professional context. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the advanced features without first establishing comprehensive data validation and security measures is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Directly risks data integrity and security, potentially leading to breaches, unauthorized modifications, or incorrect data processing. This violates the implicit professional duty to develop applications that are reliable and secure. Prioritizing user interface enhancements over backend data integrity and security is another failure. While user experience is important, it should not come at the expense of fundamental data protection. This approach overlooks the core purpose of many applications, which is to manage and process data accurately and securely. Finally, deferring security and validation to a later patch phase is a dangerous practice. Security and data integrity are not afterthoughts. They must be integral to the design and development process from the beginning. Delaying these critical aspects exponentially increases the risk of exploitation and makes remediation far more complex and costly. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, iterative development methodology. This involves clearly defining minimum viable product (MVP) requirements that include essential data validation and security. Stakeholders should be educated on the risks associated with bypassing these foundational elements. Development should proceed in phases, with each phase delivering tested, secure, and functional components. Regular communication with stakeholders about progress, risks, and trade-offs is crucial. When faced with pressure to deliver quickly, the professional decision-making process involves 1. Identifying the core requirements and their associated risks. 2. Proposing a phased approach that addresses high-risk areas first. 3. Quantifying and communicating the risks of alternative, faster approaches to stakeholders. 4. Documenting all decisions and their justification. Question 6. During the evaluation of an advanced XPage design for an IBM Lotus Domino 8. 5. 2. Application handling sensitive customer data. A key stakeholder requests a simplified access mechanism for a specific user group, suggesting the removal of certain validation checks and direct data exposure to expedite their workflow. As the developer responsible for the application's security and integrity, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Refuse the stakeholder's request, explaining that bypassing security protocols compromises data integrity and user privacy, and propose alternative solutions that maintain security while improving workflow efficiency. Option B. Implement the requested changes by disabling specific validation checks and exposing the data directly, documenting the stakeholder's request and the potential risks in the project notes. Option C. Implement a workaround by creating a separate, less secure application for the specific user group to access the data, keeping the main application secure. Option D. Proceed with the stakeholder's request without any documentation, assuming their authority supersedes standard security protocols for this specific instance. The correct answer is B. Implement the requested changes by disabling specific validation checks and exposing the data directly, documenting the stakeholder's request and the potential risks in the project notes. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to data security and user privacy within the context of developing IBM Lotus Domino 8. 5. 2 applications using XPages. The core issue revolves around the responsible handling of sensitive user information and ensuring that access controls are robust and aligned with best practices for application development. The stakeholders request to bypass standard security protocols for ease of access, while seemingly efficient in the short term, poses significant risks. The correct approach emphasizes adhering to established security principles and regulatory guidelines for data protection. In the context of application development, this means implementing proper authentication and authorization mechanisms to safeguard sensitive data. This aligns with the general principles of data privacy and security that are implicitly expected in any software development lifecycle, even if specific regulations for Domino 8. 5. 2. Aren't explicitly detailed in the prompt's jurisdiction. Best professional practice dictates prioritizing security and privacy over expediency when such a conflict arises. This involves understanding the potential impact of data breaches and the ethical obligation to protect user information. An incorrect approach that bypasses security measures for convenience would represent a failure to uphold professional responsibility. Such an action could lead to unauthorized access to sensitive data, violating user trust, and potentially exposing the organization to legal and reputational damage. This directly contravenes the fundamental ethical obligation of a developer to build secure and trustworthy applications. Another incorrect approach might involve implementing a superficial security measure that is easily circumvented, which, while appearing to address the request, still fails to provide genuine protection and thus constitutes a dereliction of duty. The professional reasoning process in such situations should involve a clear assessment of risks, a thorough understanding of security best practices, and a commitment to ethical development principles. Developers must be prepared to articulate the risks associated with insecure practices and advocate for secure solutions, even when faced with pressure to compromise. Question 7. Stakeholder feedback indicates that a critical XPage application, designed for advanced data visualization and user interaction, is experiencing significant performance degradation, leading to user frustration and decreased productivity. The development team has identified several areas within the XPage that are suspected of contributing to the slowdown, including complex view lookups, extensive server-side JavaScript computations, and the loading of multiple data sources. What is the most professional and effective approach to address these performance issues? Option A. Implement a comprehensive profiling of the XPage to identify specific performance bottlenecks, followed by targeted optimizations such as asynchronous loading of non-critical data, optimizing view and query operations, and refactoring complex server-side logic. Option B. Immediately increase the Domino server's allocated memory and CPU resources, assuming that the hardware is insufficient to handle the application's demands. Option C. Rewrite the entire XPage using a different framework, as the current XPage architecture is likely inherently inefficient for the required data processing. Option D. Implement aggressive client-side caching for all data displayed on the XPage, without a clear strategy for cache invalidation, to reduce server round trips. The correct answer is A. Implement a comprehensive profiling of the XPage to identify specific performance bottlenecks, followed by targeted optimizations such as asynchronous loading of non-critical data, optimizing view and query operations, and refactoring complex server-side logic. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in advanced XPage development where performance optimization directly impacts user experience, and by extension, the efficiency of business processes. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for rich, dynamic user interfaces with the need for rapid data retrieval and rendering, especially in a production Domino environment. Stakeholders are concerned about the responsiveness of the application, which can lead to frustration, reduced productivity, and potentially missed business opportunities if users abandon the application due to slowness. The correct approach involves a systematic and data-driven method to identify and resolve performance bottlenecks. This aligns with best practices in application development, emphasizing thorough testing and targeted optimization. By profiling the XPage and analyzing the execution of specific components, developers can pinpoint the exact areas causing delays. Implementing asynchronous loading for non-critical data, optimizing view and query operations, and judiciously using server-side JavaScript or Java for complex logic are all recognized techniques for improving XPage performance. This methodical approach ensures that optimizations are effective and do not introduce new issues, ultimately leading to a more stable and responsive application that meets stakeholder expectations and adheres to principles of efficient resource utilization. An incorrect approach would be to implement broad, unverified changes without understanding the root cause of the performance issues. For instance, indiscriminately caching data without considering cache invalidation strategies can lead to stale information, undermining data integrity. Similarly, prematurely optimizing code that is not a significant bottleneck, premature optimization, wastes development time and can introduce complexity without tangible benefits. Another flawed approach is to simply increase server resources without addressing underlying application inefficiencies. This is a costly and often ineffective solution that masks rather than solves the problem. These approaches fail to address the core issues, potentially exacerbating problems or creating new ones, and demonstrate a lack of professional diligence in problem solving. Professionals should adopt a structured problem-solving framework. This involves clearly defining the problem, slow XPage performance, gathering data, profiling, logs, hypothesizing potential causes, testing hypotheses through targeted changes, and verifying the results. This iterative process, informed by an understanding of XPage architecture and performance tuning techniques, ensures that solutions are robust and effective. Question 8. Market research demonstrates a strong user demand for a new feature in an existing IBM Lotus Domino 8.5. 2 XPage application that allows users to input free-form text for a specific field. To expedite delivery, the development team is considering implementing only client-side JavaScript validation for this field, as server-side validation logic would require more development time. What is the most professionally responsible approach to address this requirement? Option A. Rely solely on client-side JavaScript validation to provide immediate feedback to users, accepting the risk of invalid data entering the system due to bypassable client-side checks. Option B. Skip all validation for this free-form text field to meet the immediate delivery deadline, assuming users will enter valid data. Option C. Implement robust server-side validation logic within the XPage, potentially using Domino's built-in validation controls or custom SSJS, to ensure data integrity and security, even if it means a slight delay in delivery. Option D. Implement a combination of basic client-side validation for immediate user feedback and a simplified, less stringent server-side validation to mitigate some risks while still meeting the deadline. The correct answer is C. Implement robust server-side validation logic within the XPage, potentially using Domino's built-in validation controls or custom SSJS to ensure data integrity and security, even if it means a slight delay in delivery. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between delivering a feature that meets user demand and adhering to established development best practices, particularly concerning data integrity and security within the IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2 XPage environment. The pressure to quickly implement a solution, even if it bypasses standard validation, can lead to significant downstream issues. Careful judgment is required to balance expediency with robust application design. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data integrity and user experience through comprehensive validation. Implementing server-side validation ensures that data is consistently checked regardless of the client's capabilities or potential manipulation. This aligns with general software development principles of trust, no input, and is crucial for maintaining the reliability and security of the application. In the context of XPages, leveraging built-in validation controls and custom validation logic within the XPage framework provides a structured and maintainable way to enforce these rules, preventing malformed or invalid data from entering the system, and thus safeguarding the integrity of the underlying Domino database. An incorrect approach that relies solely on client-side validation is professionally unacceptable because it offers a false sense of security. Client-side validation is easily bypassed by users with basic technical knowledge or by automated scripts, leaving the application vulnerable to invalid data. This failure to implement server-side checks constitutes a significant security and data integrity risk. Another incorrect approach, which involves skipping validation entirely to meet a deadline, is ethically and professionally unsound. This prioritizes speed over quality and security, potentially leading to data corruption, application instability, and a loss of user trust. It demonstrates a disregard for the long-term health of the application and the data it manages. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment. When faced with a conflict between a desired feature and development best practices, developers should first identify the potential risks associated with each approach. This includes evaluating the impact of invalid data on the application's functionality, security, and the integrity of the stored information. Next, they should explore alternative solutions that can achieve the desired outcome while adhering to best practices, even if it requires more upfront effort. If a compromise is necessary, it should be a carefully considered one, with clear documentation of the risks and mitigation strategies. Communication with stakeholders about the trade-offs involved is also paramount. Question 9. Regulatory review indicates that a new feature for an IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2 application, designed using advanced XPage techniques to provide personalized user dashboards, involves the collection and display of user activity logs. Which approach best ensures compliance with data privacy regulations while delivering this advanced functionality? Option A. Collect all available user activity data to provide the most comprehensive personalization and address any privacy issues if they are raised by users or regulators. Option B. Implement robust access controls and data encryption for the activity logs and clearly document the purpose and scope of data collection in the application's privacy policy. Option C. Focus on delivering the advanced XPage features first, and plan to address any potential data privacy concerns through a post-development audit. Option D. Proceed with the advanced XPage design for personalized dashboards, assuming that general application security measures will adequately protect the activity log data. Correct answer is B. Implement robust access controls and data encryption for the activity logs, and clearly document the purpose and scope of data collection in the application's privacy policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between delivering functional application features and adhering to established data privacy regulations within the context of developing IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2 applications using XPages. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that advanced XPage design techniques, while enhancing user experience and functionality, do not inadvertently compromise sensitive user data or violate compliance requirements. Careful judgment is required to balance innovation with responsibility. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a proactive and integrated strategy for data privacy and security throughout the development lifecycle. By embedding privacy considerations into the design and development process from the outset, it ensures that compliance is not an afterthought but a fundamental aspect of the application's architecture. This aligns with the principles of privacy by design, which is increasingly mandated by regulatory frameworks. Specifically, it demonstrates a commitment to understanding and implementing data minimization, purpose limitation, and robust access controls, all of which are critical for meeting regulatory obligations related to personal data handling. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on feature implementation without considering data privacy implications represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This oversight can lead to the collection or processing of personal data in ways that are not authorized, transparent, or secure, thereby violating data protection laws. Another incorrect approach that relies on post-development audits to identify and rectify privacy issues is also professionally unacceptable. This reactive stance is inefficient, costly, and carries a higher risk of non-compliance, as critical vulnerabilities may have already been exploited or data compromised. It fails to uphold the principle of accountability, which requires demonstrable compliance. A third incorrect approach that assumes existing security measures are sufficient without specific validation against current data privacy regulations is equally flawed. This assumption can lead to a false sense of security and leave the application and its users vulnerable to breaches and regulatory penalties. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, thoroughly understand the specific data privacy regulations applicable to the project's jurisdiction. Second, conduct a comprehensive data flow analysis to identify all personal data being collected, processed, and stored. Third, integrate privacy requirements into the XPage design and development specifications, focusing on data minimization, consent management, and access controls. Fourth, implement and test security measures specifically designed to protect personal data. Finally, establish ongoing monitoring and review processes to ensure continued compliance as regulations and application usage evolve. Question 10. The efficiency study reveals that a critical XPage application is experiencing significant slowdowns during user interaction, impacting productivity. The development team needs to address this performance bottleneck. Which of the following approaches is the most effective and professionally sound method for resolving this issue? Option A. Focus solely on optimizing server-side database queries, assuming that all performance issues stem from data retrieval latency. Option B. Apply a series of generic XPage performance tuning tips found on external forums without specific analysis of the application's behavior. Option C. Immediately implement aggressive client-side caching mechanisms across all data sources within the XPage to reduce server load. Option D. Conduct a detailed analysis of the XPage code, server logs, and browser performance metrics to identify the specific root cause of the slowdown. Then implement targeted optimizations to address that cause. The correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed analysis of the XPage code, server logs, and browser performance metrics to identify the specific root cause of the slowdown. Then implement targeted optimizations to address that cause. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in application development where performance bottlenecks are identified, and the development team must choose the most effective and compliant solution. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for improved performance with adherence to established development standards and the potential impact on existing functionality and user experience. The decision requires a deep understanding of XPage architecture, performance optimization techniques, and the implications of different implementation strategies within the context of IBM Lotus Domino 8. 5. 2. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and data-driven method to identify and address the performance issue. This begins with a thorough analysis of the XPage code, server logs, and browser developer tools to pinpoint the exact cause of the inefficiency. Once identified, the solution should focus on optimizing the specific problematic component, such as inefficient data retrieval, excessive rendering, or poorly structured JavaScript. This might involve refactoring code, optimizing database queries, leveraging server-side logic where appropriate, or implementing client-side caching strategies. This approach represents best professional practice because it is targeted, minimizes the risk of introducing new issues, and ensures that resources are allocated efficiently to solve the root cause. It aligns with the principles of good software engineering, emphasizing maintainability, scalability, and user satisfaction within the context of IBM Lotus Domino 8.5 development. This methodical approach ensures that the chosen solution is compatible with the platform's capabilities and limitations. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately implement a broad, untested solution without proper diagnosis. For example, blindly adding extensive client-side caching or aggressively optimizing all data retrieval without understanding the specific bottleneck can lead to unintended consequences. This might include breaking existing functionality, creating data inconsistencies, or even degrading performance in other areas. Ethically, this approach fails to uphold the responsibility to deliver a stable and reliable application. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on server-side optimizations without considering the client-side rendering impact. While server performance is crucial, an inefficient XPage rendering process on the client can still lead to a poor user experience. This approach might overlook opportunities to improve rendering speed through techniques like partial refresh or lazy loading, which are key XPage features. This failure to consider the full user experience and application lifecycle is a professional oversight. A third incorrect approach involves making changes based on anecdotal evidence or assumptions rather than empirical data, relying on what worked elsewhere, or what a colleague suggested without validating it against the specific application, and its usage patterns can lead to ineffective solutions and wasted development effort. This deviates from professional diligence and the principle of evidence-based decision-making. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework when addressing performance issues. This framework typically involves 1. Problem identification. Clearly define the performance issue and its impact. 2. Data gathering. Collect relevant metrics and logs to understand the problem's scope and root cause. 3. Root cause analysis. Systematically analyze the gathered data to pinpoint the exact source of the inefficiency. 4. Solution design. Develop potential solutions, considering their impact on performance, functionality, maintainability, and user experience. 5. Solution implementation. Implement the chosen solution in a controlled manner, ideally with testing. 6. Verification and monitoring. Test the implemented solution thoroughly and monitor performance to ensure the issue is resolved and no new problems have arisen. This iterative process ensures that solutions are effective, efficient, and professionally sound. Question 11. Stakeholder feedback indicates a strong desire from the marketing department to implement a new, complex data visualization component within an existing XPage application immediately to support an upcoming campaign. However, the development team has concerns that this component, if implemented without thorough performance testing and optimization, could significantly degrade the application's responsiveness for all users. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Prioritize the marketing department's request and allocate development resources to build the component without a formal technical review, assuming it will be performant enough. Option B. Implement the data visualization component immediately as requested by the marketing department to meet their campaign deadline, addressing any performance issues reactively. Option C. Conduct a detailed technical assessment of the proposed component's impact on XPage performance and scalability, and based on the findings, propose an optimized implementation or a phased rollout. Option D. Inform the marketing department that their request cannot be fulfilled due to potential performance concerns and defer the feature indefinitely. The correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed technical assessment of the proposed component's impact on XPage performance and scalability, and based on the findings, propose an optimized implementation or a phased rollout. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in application development where conflicting stakeholder priorities necessitate a structured decision-making process. The core conflict lies between the immediate need for a feature perceived as critical by one group and the long-term implications of its implementation on application performance and maintainability, as highlighted by another. The challenge is to balance immediate business demands with technical best practices and the overall health of the application, ensuring that decisions are not solely driven by the loudest voice or the most urgent request. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough technical evaluation of the proposed feature's impact on the XPage application's performance and scalability. This includes analyzing the complexity of the XPage, the potential for increased server load, and the long-term maintainability of the code. By prioritizing a technical assessment, the development team demonstrates a commitment to building robust and efficient applications, which aligns with the implicit expectation of delivering high-quality software. This approach ensures that decisions are data-driven and consider the broader implications beyond immediate user satisfaction. It fosters trust by showing stakeholders that their feedback is valued, but also that technical integrity is paramount for the application's success. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the feature immediately without a technical assessment disregards the potential negative consequences on application performance. This can lead to a degraded user experience for all users, increased server resource consumption, and a higher technical debt, making future development and maintenance more difficult. This approach fails to uphold professional responsibility by prioritizing expediency over quality and long-term viability. Deferring the feature indefinitely without proper consideration of the stakeholder's urgent need is also problematic. While technical concerns are valid, completely ignoring a stakeholder's request without exploring potential compromises or phased implementations can damage stakeholder relationships and lead to frustration. This approach lacks a balanced perspective and fails to engage constructively with user feedback. Focusing solely on the stakeholder's perceived urgency without any technical validation risks introducing poorly designed or inefficient code. This can lead to the very performance issues that the development team is trying to avoid, creating a cycle of reactive fixes rather than proactive design. It prioritizes immediate gratification over sustainable development. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that balances stakeholder needs with technical feasibility and long-term application health. This involves 1. Understanding the request. Clearly define the stakeholder's need and the perceived urgency. 2. Technical assessment. Evaluate the technical implications of the request, including performance, scalability, and maintainability. 3. Risk/benefit analysis. Weigh the immediate benefits of fulfilling the request against the potential risks and costs. 4. Explore alternatives. Consider alternative implementations or phased approaches that might satisfy the stakeholder's need while mitigating technical risks. 5. Communicate and collaborate. Engage in open communication with stakeholders, explaining the technical considerations and proposed solutions. 6. Document decisions. Record the rationale behind the final decision for future reference and accountability. Question 12. Implementation of a new customer relationship management. XPage requires robust data validation to prevent incorrect entries for customer contact information. The development team is debating the best strategy for enforcing these validation rules. Which approach best ensures data integrity and a secure application? Option A. Implement validation rules solely within the Domino database's document forms, without any XPage level validation. Option B. Rely exclusively on client-side JavaScript for all validation, providing instant feedback to users as they enter data. Option C. Delegate all validation logic to Lotus script agents that are triggered only after the XPage form has been submitted. Option D. Implement validation logic primarily using server-side JavaScript within XPage event handlers and computed fields, supplemented by client-side JavaScript for immediate user feedback. Correct answer is D. Implement validation logic primarily using server-side JavaScript within XPage event handlers and computed fields, supplemented by client-side JavaScript for immediate user feedback. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in advanced XPage development, balancing the need for dynamic, user-driven data manipulation with the imperative to maintain data integrity and adhere to established business logic. The professional challenge lies in selecting an XPage design pattern that effectively encapsulates and enforces these rules without compromising user experience or introducing security vulnerabilities. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen approach aligns with the application's overall architecture and the specific requirements of the data being managed. The correct approach involves leveraging XPage's built-in features for data validation and server-side logic execution. By implementing validation rules directly within the XPage data sources or using computed fields and server-side JavaScript, SSJS, within event handlers, like before render response or after page load, developers can ensure that data is validated asterisk before asterisk. It is committed to the Domino database. This approach represents best professional practice because it centralizes validation logic, making it easier to maintain and update. It also ensures that data integrity is enforced at the point of interaction, preventing invalid data from ever reaching the backend. This aligns with general principles of robust application development and data governance, which are implicitly expected in professional software engineering, even without specific Domino-specific regulations being cited for this exam. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on client-side JavaScript for validation. While client-side validation offers immediate feedback to the user, it is easily bypassed by users with technical knowledge or by malicious actors. This failure to enforce validation on the server leaves the application vulnerable to data corruption and security breaches, which are ethically unacceptable in professional development. Another incorrect approach would be to delegate all validation logic to the Domino database's agent or Lotus script, without any XPage level validation. This creates a disconnect between the user interface and the backend logic, potentially leading to a poor user experience where errors are only discovered after submission, and it makes the XPage less self-contained and harder to manage. This also represents a failure in professional practice by not utilizing the capabilities of the XPage framework effectively for a complete solution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a layered approach to validation. First, consider client-side validation for immediate user feedback. Second, implement robust server-side validation within the XPage itself, using SSJS and computed fields to enforce business rules and data integrity before data is saved. Finally, ensure that any critical business logic or complex validation that cannot be effectively handled within the XPage is implemented in server-side Lotus script or agents, but always triggered and managed in conjunction with the XPage's data submission process. This layered strategy ensures both a good user experience and strong data security and integrity. Question 13. The monitoring system demonstrates an intermittent failure in saving user-entered data for a critical field within an advanced XPage application, leading to data loss for some users. The issue appears to be related to an interaction between client-side validation and the server-side data submission process. Which of the following approaches best addresses this problem while adhering to professional development standards for IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2 applications? Option A. Focus solely on optimizing the server-side code for data persistence, assuming the client-side validation is functioning correctly and the issue lies purely in server performance. Option B. Implement a secondary, redundant save mechanism that triggers automatically if the primary save operation fails, without diagnosing the root cause of the initial failure. Option C. Investigate and debug the client-side JavaScript validation logic and the server-side event handlers responsible for data processing and saving, to identify the specific point of failure and implement a precise correction. Option D. Disable all client-side validation for the affected field to ensure data is always submitted to the server, regardless of its format. The correct answer is C. Investigate and debug the client-side JavaScript validation logic and the server-side event handlers responsible for data processing and saving to identify the specific point of failure and implement a precise correction. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to data integrity and user experience within an advanced XPage application. The monitoring system has detected an anomaly where user input for a critical field is not being consistently saved due to an unexpected interaction between client-side validation and server-side processing. This inconsistency can lead to data loss, user frustration, and potential compliance issues if the lost data is subject to regulatory record-keeping requirements. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause and implementing a robust solution that balances technical correctness with user accessibility and adherence to development best practices for IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2 applications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic debugging process that prioritizes understanding the interaction between XPage components, JavaScript, and the underlying Domino data store. This includes examining the client-side validation logic, e.g., JavaScript within the XPage to ensure it correctly triggers and passes data, and then scrutinizing the server-side event handlers, e. G. For render response after page load or specific computed field/controls to confirm data is being processed and saved accurately. The use of XPage debugging tools, console logs, and potentially stepping through server-side code is crucial. This methodical approach ensures that the fix addresses the actual problem without introducing new issues, thereby maintaining data integrity and a reliable user experience, which are implicit requirements for any application handling sensitive information. This aligns with professional development standards that emphasize thorough testing and validation of application logic. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to simply disable client-side validation to fix the saving issue. This is professionally unacceptable because it bypasses a critical layer of data quality control, potentially allowing invalid data to be submitted to the server. This increases the risk of data corruption and can lead to compliance violations if the application is meant to enforce specific data formats or business rules. Another incorrect approach would be to solely focus on server-side code without investigating the client-side interaction. While the problem might manifest on the server, the root cause could be a faulty client-side script that is not correctly preparing or sending the data. Ignoring the client-side aspect means the solution might be incomplete or only a temporary workaround, leaving the application vulnerable to future, similar issues. A third incorrect approach would be to implement a complex workaround that involves multiple redundant save operations or convoluted logic without understanding the core conflict. This approach is inefficient, difficult to maintain, and increases the likelihood of introducing further bugs. It fails to address the underlying architectural or logical flaw, which is a hallmark of unprofessional development. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured problem-solving framework. This begins with clearly defining the observed problem and its impact. Next, they should gather all relevant information, including system logs, user reports, and application code. Hypothesis generation and testing are then critical, starting with the most likely causes and systematically eliminating possibilities. For XPage development, this means understanding the lifecycle of an XPage, the interplay of client-side and server-side execution, and the specific Domino data saving mechanisms. The chosen solution must be validated through rigorous testing to ensure it resolves the original issue without creating new ones. This systematic, evidence-based approach ensures the integrity and reliability of the application, which is paramount in professional software development. Question 14. Process analysis reveals that a critical XPage application requires users to update complex, interrelated financial records. The current implementation allows direct binding of fields to data sources, with basic client-side JavaScript validation for format checks. The development team is considering enhancing this by allowing more direct user manipulation of these bound fields to streamline data entry. But there are concerns about potential data inconsistencies and the ability to audit changes effectively. Which of the following approaches best addresses these concerns while adhering to robust application development principles? Option A. Enhance the existing client-side JavaScript to include more complex validation rules that mirror the business logic, relying on this client-side logic to prevent inconsistent data from being saved. Option B. Implement a server-side managed bean that retrieves the relevant data, performs all necessary business rule validations and data integrity checks, and then updates the data source only after successful validation. User input is passed to this bean for processing. Option C. Modify the XPage to directly bind all editable fields to the data source, allowing users to make changes directly and relying on the underlying database constraints to prevent invalid data. Option D. Introduce a separate XPage that acts as a data staging area, where users enter all changes, and then a batch process runs periodically to apply these changes to the main data source after manual review. The correct answer is B. Implement a server-side managed bean that retrieves the relevant data, performs all necessary business rule validations and data integrity checks, and then updates the data source only after successful validation. User input is passed to this bean for processing. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in advanced XPage development, balancing the need for dynamic, user-driven data manipulation with the imperative to maintain data integrity and adhere to application design principles. The developer is tasked with implementing a feature that allows users to modify complex, interrelated data structures directly within an XPage. This is professionally challenging because uncontrolled direct manipulation can lead to inconsistent states, data corruption, and a breakdown of the application's intended workflow, potentially violating implicit or explicit business rules that govern data relationships. Furthermore, in a regulated environment, such data manipulation could have compliance implications if not properly audited or controlled. The correct approach, which involves encapsulating the data modification logic within a server-side managed bean or a dedicated Lotus script/Java class, represents best professional practice. This is because it allows for centralized control over data validation, business rule enforcement, and transaction management. By performing modifications on the server, the application can ensure that all data changes are processed consistently, validated against defined criteria, and committed atomically. This server-side control is crucial for maintaining data integrity and is often a requirement for applications handling sensitive information, aligning with principles of secure and reliable application development. While the exam jurisdiction is not explicitly stated, general best practices in software development, which are universally applicable and often codified in industry standards and compliance frameworks, emphasize server-side validation and control for critical data operations. An incorrect approach that directly manipulates data bindings on the client side without server-side validation or control is professionally unacceptable. This is because it bypasses essential checks, making the application vulnerable to invalid data entry and inconsistent states. Ethically, it fails to uphold the responsibility of delivering a robust and reliable application. From a regulatory perspective, depending on the nature of the data, this could lead to non-compliance with data integrity standards or audit trail requirements, as changes might not be logged or validated appropriately. Another incorrect approach, relying solely on client-side JavaScript validation, is also professionally flawed. While client-side validation offers a better user experience by providing immediate feedback, it is easily circumvented and should never be the sole mechanism for data integrity. Relying on it exclusively creates a false sense of security and leaves the application open to malicious or accidental data corruption. This approach fails to meet the professional standard of robust data protection. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a layered approach to data validation and modification. First, understand the business rules and data integrity requirements thoroughly. Second, design the XPage to capture user input effectively, potentially with client-side validation for immediate feedback. Third, implement robust server-side logic via managed beans or server-side scripts to perform comprehensive validation, enforce business rules, and manage data transactions. Finally, ensure adequate logging and auditing mechanisms are in place to track all data modifications. This systematic approach prioritizes data integrity, security, and compliance, reflecting a mature and responsible development practice. Question 15. Benchmark analysis indicates that a new feature requiring real-time data updates based on user input within an IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2 XPage application is being developed. The primary goal is to provide a highly interactive user experience without compromising data integrity or application security. Considering the architectural constraints and capabilities of Domino 8.5.2, which approach best balances these competing objectives for implementing the real-time update mechanism. Option A. Design the feature to trigger a full page reload for every user interaction that necessitates a data update, ensuring all server-side logic is executed during the reload. Option B. Integrate a third-party JavaScript library for real-time data synchronization, bypassing Domino's native data access and update mechanisms to achieve rapid UI changes. Option C. Rely exclusively on client-side JavaScript embedded within script blocks to manage all data fetching, validation, and UI updates, assuming user input will be directly reflected on the page. Option D. Implement data fetching and updates using server-side JavaScript, SSJS, within XPage event handlers, coupled with client-side JavaScript for UI manipulation and partial refreshes to update specific XPage components. The correct answer is D. Implement data fetching and updates using server-side JavaScript, SSJS, within XPage event handlers, coupled with client-side JavaScript for UI manipulation and partial refreshes to update specific XPage components. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in advanced XPage development. balancing the desire for dynamic, user-centric interfaces with the need for robust data integrity and adherence to established application design principles. The developer is tasked with implementing a feature that allows for real-time updates based on user input, which inherently introduces complexity in managing state, data validation, and potential race conditions. The professional challenge lies in selecting an XPage design pattern that effectively addresses these complexities without compromising the application's stability, security, or maintainability, all within the context of the IBM Lotus Domino 8. 5. 2. Development environment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach leverages the inherent capabilities of XPages for client-side interaction and server-side data management. By utilizing server-side JavaScript (SSJS) within event handlers like on-client load or on-click to fetch and update data, and employing the XP, Dojo, or XP script components for client-side manipulation, the developer can create a responsive user experience. This method ensures that data validation and business logic are primarily handled on the server, maintaining data integrity. The use of partial refresh equals true, is crucial for updating specific sections of the XPage without a full page reload, enhancing performance and user experience. This approach aligns with best practices for Domino application development by separating concerns, ensuring data security, and providing a performant user interface. It respects the architecture of Domino 8, 5, 2, where server-side processing is paramount for data operations. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to rely solely on client-side JavaScript, e.g., within XP, script blocks without server-side validation for all data manipulation and updates. This would create significant security vulnerabilities, as client-side code can be bypassed, leading to unauthorized data modifications or exposure. It also undermines data integrity, as validation logic might not be consistently applied. Another incorrect approach would be to perform full-page reloads for every user interaction that requires data updates. This is inefficient, degrades the user experience by causing noticeable delays, and does not take advantage of XPage's partial refresh capabilities, which are a core feature for building modern web applications within the Domino environment. A third incorrect approach might involve over-reliance on complex client-side frameworks or libraries not natively supported or well-integrated with Domino 8. 5. 2. Leading to integration issues, increased development complexity, and potential maintenance headaches. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes the core principles of secure, efficient, and maintainable application development. This involves 1. Understanding the requirements. Clearly define the functional and non-functional requirements of the feature. 2. Evaluating XPage capabilities. Assess how XPage's built-in components and features, server-side SSJS, partial refresh, Dojo integration can best meet these requirements. 3. Prioritizing data integrity and security. Always ensure that sensitive operations and validation occur on the server. 4. Considering user experience. Design for responsiveness and efficiency, utilizing features like partial refresh. 5. Assessing maintainability. Choose approaches that are well-documented, understandable, and align with common Domino development patterns. 6. Testing thoroughly. Validate the chosen approach under various conditions to ensure stability and correctness. Question 16. Investigation of an advanced XPage design scenario where a developer needs to display a list of customer records, but only those customers who have placed an order in the last 30 days. The available data is stored in a Lotus Domino application with a large number of customer documents and a separate set of order documents linked to customers. The developer is considering different methods to retrieve and filter this data for display on the XPage, which approach best balances performance, security, and efficient data handling within the context of Lotus Domino 8. 5. 2 XPage development. Option A. Implement a client-side script that iterates through each customer document, then queries the order documents for each customer to check the date, filtering as it goes. Option B. Fetch all fields from all customer documents into a client-side data source, and then apply a client-side filter to identify customers with recent orders based on a computed field that aggregates order dates. Option C. Retrieve all customer documents and all order documents to the client, then use client-side JavaScript to filter and display only the relevant customers. Option D. Utilize a server-side view or a computed view that pre-filters orders within the last 30 days and then joins or relates this data to customer information for display. Correct answer is D. Utilize a server-side view or a computed view that pre-filters orders within the last 30 days and then joins or relates this data to customer information for display. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between delivering a functional application and adhering to the principles of secure and efficient data handling within the IBM Lotus Domino 8.5. To XPage development context. The developer must balance the immediate need for data display with the long-term implications of data integrity, performance, and security, all within the framework of advanced XPage design. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is not only technically sound, but also aligns with best practices for application development and data management. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the efficient and secure retrieval of data. By using a server-side data source, like a view or a query, that is already optimized for retrieval, the application minimizes the amount of data transferred from the server to the client. This is crucial for performance, especially with larger datasets, and reduces the attack surface by not exposing raw document data unnecessarily. Furthermore, server-side processing allows for more robust validation and security checks before data is presented to the user, aligning with principles of data integrity and security. This aligns with the implicit guidelines for responsible application development within the Lotus Domino ecosystem, emphasizing performance and security. An incorrect approach that involves retrieving all fields from a document and then filtering on the client side is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of understanding of efficient data handling. It leads to significant performance degradation, as large amounts of unnecessary data are transferred and processed on the client. This also increases the risk of exposing sensitive data if client-side filtering is not perfectly implemented or if the client environment is compromised. Ethically, it represents a failure to provide a performant and secure user experience. Another incorrect approach, fetching data using a client-side script that iterates through all documents and then applies filtering, is also professionally unsound. This is even more inefficient than the previous incorrect approach, as it involves client-side iteration over potentially numerous documents, which is a highly inefficient pattern for data retrieval. It exacerbates performance issues and increases the likelihood of application unresponsiveness. This approach demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of how to leverage the server's capabilities for data management and processing, leading to a poor user experience and potential application instability. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a systematic evaluation of data retrieval strategies. Professionals should first consider the nature and volume of the data required. Then, they should assess the capabilities of the server-side environment, in this case, Lotus Domino, for data processing and filtering. Prioritizing server-side operations for data retrieval and manipulation is generally the most efficient and secure method. Client-side operations should be reserved for presentation logic and user interaction, not for bulk data fetching or filtering. Finally, always consider the performance implications and security risks associated with each approach before implementation. Question 17. Performance analysis shows that detailed user interaction tracking within the XPage's application could significantly improve the identification of performance bottlenecks and user workflow inefficiencies. However, the current application design does not explicitly inform users about this level of tracking or request their consent for collecting such granular behavioral data. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach to address this situation? Option A. Implement a clear and prominent user notification within the XPage's application that explains the type of data being collected for performance analysis, its purpose, and provides an option for users to opt out of this detailed tracking before any such data is collected. Option B. Retroactively update the application's privacy policy to include a general statement about collecting data for performance improvement, without specifically informing users or providing an opt-out mechanism for this detailed tracking. Option C. Proceed with implementing the detailed user interaction tracking, assuming that performance analysis data is implicitly permitted for system improvement, and that users understand this is standard practice. Option D. Anonymize all collected user interaction data before storing it, thereby removing any direct link to individual users, and proceed with the detailed tracking without explicit user notification or consent. Correct answer is A. Implement a clear and prominent user notification within the XPage's application that explains the type of data being collected for performance analysis, its purpose, and provides an option for users to opt out of this detailed tracking before any such data is collected. Explanation. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in software development, particularly concerning data privacy and user consent, which is highly relevant to advanced XPage design in IBM Lotus Domino 8. 5. 2. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for detailed performance insights with the obligation to protect user privacy and adhere to data handling regulations. Developers must make judgment calls on what data is necessary, how it's collected, and how it's used, ensuring transparency and user control. The correct approach prioritizes user privacy and regulatory compliance by obtaining explicit consent before collecting any personally identifiable information or data that could be used to infer user behavior. This aligns with principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that data is only collected for specified, explicit, and legitimate purposes, and is not processed in a manner that is incompatible with those purposes. Transparency about data collection and usage is paramount, empowering users to make informed decisions. An incorrect approach that proceeds with collecting detailed user interaction data without explicit consent violates fundamental privacy principles and potentially regulatory requirements. This could lead to a breach of trust, legal repercussions, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, which anonymizes data but still collects extensive behavioral patterns without consent, is also problematic. While anonymization can mitigate some risks, the collection of detailed behavioral data without a clear, consented purpose can still be seen as intrusive and may not fully comply with regulations that require consent for data processing, even if anonymized. The failure here is in assuming anonymization negates the need for consent for the act of data collection itself. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape governing data privacy in their operating jurisdiction. This involves identifying what constitutes personal data, the conditions under which it can be collected and processed, and the requirements for user consent. Next, they should assess the business need for the data against the potential privacy impact. If data collection is deemed necessary, the principle of least privilege should be applied, collecting only the minimum data required. Crucially, a transparent consent mechanism must be designed and implemented, clearly explaining what data will be collected, why, and how it will be used. Regular review of data collection practices and adherence to privacy policies are essential components of responsible development. Question 18. When evaluating the introduction of a new data validation component within an existing XPage application designed for internal financial reporting, what is the most critical step to ensure the application's stability and compliance before deployment? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes potential effects on existing XPages, data integrity, performance, and security protocols. Option B. Prioritize the immediate functional requirements of the new validation component, deferring any broader architectural considerations to a later maintenance cycle. Option C. Rely on informal peer reviews and developer intuition to gauge the potential risks associated with integrating the new component. Option D. Proceed with the implementation based on the development team's confidence that the changes are isolated and will not affect other parts of the application. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes potential effects on existing XPages, data integrity, performance, and security protocols. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the development team is under pressure to deliver a new feature quickly, potentially leading to shortcuts that could compromise the integrity and security of the application. The impact assessment topic is critical here, as it requires a systematic evaluation of how changes might affect existing functionality, performance, security, and user experience. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid development with the responsibility to ensure the application remains robust, compliant, and secure. The correct approach involves conducting a thorough impact assessment before implementing the new feature. This process typically includes identifying all components that might be affected, analyzing potential risks and their severity, and developing mitigation strategies. This represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of responsible software development and adherence to established guidelines for application design and deployment. In the context of IBM Lotus Domino 8.5, 2 applications and XPage design. This means understanding how the new feature interacts with the Domino infrastructure, existing XPages, data security, and user roles. A proper impact assessment ensures that potential negative consequences are identified and addressed proactively, thereby preventing costly rework, security breaches, or user dissatisfaction. It also implicitly supports the need for due diligence in application development, a key ethical consideration. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the implementation without a formal impact assessment, assuming the changes are minor and will not cause significant disruption. This is professionally unacceptable because it disregards the potential for unforeseen consequences. Such an approach risks introducing bugs, performance degradation, or security vulnerabilities that could have serious repercussions. From a regulatory or ethical standpoint, this demonstrates a lack of due diligence, and a failure to uphold professional standards in software development could lead to noncompliance with internal policies or even external regulations if the application handles sensitive data. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the immediate functional requirements of the new feature, neglecting to consider its broader impact on the application's architecture or existing data structures. This is flawed because it prioritizes short-term gains over long-term stability and maintainability. Ethically, it shows a disregard for the overall health of the application and the potential negative impact on users who rely on its consistent performance and security. A third incorrect approach might involve relying on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few developers regarding the potential impact, rather than a structured and documented assessment. This is unprofessional as it lacks objectivity and a systematic basis for decision-making. It opens the door to biases and overlooks critical aspects that a formal assessment would uncover, potentially leading to significant issues down the line and a failure to meet professional obligations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to change management. This includes 1. Clearly defining the proposed change and its objectives. 2. Identifying all stakeholders who might be affected. 3. Conducting a comprehensive impact assessment, considering technical, functional, security, and user experience aspects. 4. Documenting the findings, including identified risks and proposed mitigation strategies. 5. Obtaining necessary approvals based on the assessment. 6. Implementing the change with careful monitoring and testing. 7. Post-implementation review to ensure objectives were met and no unintended consequences arose. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and professional responsibilities are met. Question 19. The performance metrics show a significant increase in server response times and user-reported slowness immediately following the deployment of a new XPage component designed to enhance data visualization. What is the most professional and responsible approach to address this issue? Option A. Deploy a client-side JavaScript optimization script to the affected XPages to mitigate the perceived slowness, assuming the issue is primarily with user interface rendering. Option B. Proceed with the deployment of the new XPage component to all production servers, as the performance impact is likely temporary and will resolve itself as the server caches the new data. Option C. Revert the XPage component to its previous state without further investigation, as the immediate performance impact indicates a critical flaw that cannot be resolved. Option D. Immediately roll back the new XPage component to the previous stable version and initiate a detailed investigation into the root cause of the performance degradation in a development environment. The correct answer is D. Immediately roll back the new XPage component to the previous stable version and initiate a detailed investigation into the root cause of the performance degradation in a development environment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in application development where performance degradation is observed after a seemingly minor change. The professional challenge lies in accurately identifying the root cause of the performance issue without introducing further instability or compromising data integrity. The developer must balance the need for rapid resolution with the imperative to follow established development and deployment best practices, which often include thorough impact assessment before and after changes. The pressure to restore functionality quickly can lead to shortcuts, but these can have significant downstream consequences. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented impact assessment. This means understanding the scope of the change, identifying all affected components and functionalities, and then performing targeted testing to validate performance under expected load conditions. For XPage's applications on Domino, this would include analyzing the impact on server resources, CPU, memory, disk I/O, database performance, and client-side rendering. Documenting the assessment process and findings is crucial for audit trails and future reference, aligning with general software development best practices that emphasize traceability and accountability. While specific regulations for XPage's development aren't typically prescriptive in this manner, the principle of due diligence and risk mitigation is universally applicable in professional software engineering. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a rollback without a thorough investigation is an ethically questionable approach. While it might resolve the immediate performance issue, it fails to address the underlying cause. This can lead to recurring problems and a lack of confidence in the development process. It bypasses the crucial step of understanding why the change caused a problem, which is a fundamental aspect of professional software engineering and a failure of due diligence. Deploying the change to production without any form of impact assessment or testing is a direct violation of professional responsibility. This approach prioritizes speed over stability and data integrity, exposing the production environment to unacceptable risk. It demonstrates a disregard for the potential consequences on users and business operations, which is ethically unsound and unprofessional. Focusing solely on client-side performance without considering server-side implications is an incomplete assessment. XPage's applications are a client-server architecture, and performance issues can originate from either side. Neglecting server-side impacts, such as increased database load or inefficient server-side logic, can lead to a misdiagnosis and an ineffective solution, ultimately failing to resolve the problem comprehensively and potentially causing further issues. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to problem solving. When performance issues arise after a change, the first step is to isolate the change and its potential impact. This involves reviewing change logs, understanding the technical details of the modification, and then performing a risk-based impact assessment. This assessment should consider all layers of the application stack, from the client interface to the server and database. If the impact assessment indicates a high risk or potential for performance degradation, then targeted testing in a non-production environment is essential. If issues are found, a rollback might be considered, but only after documenting the findings and planning for a corrected deployment. The decision-making process should prioritize stability, data integrity, and user experience, guided by established software development lifecycle principles. Question 20. The assessment process reveals that a critical IBM Lotus Domino 8.5.2 XPage application used for customer order processing is experiencing intermittent slowdowns during peak business hours. To understand the root cause and potential impact on business operations, which of the following approaches to assessing the application's performance is most professionally sound and compliant with best practices for application development and deployment? Option A. Initiate a full system stress test by bombarding the production Domino server with a high volume of concurrent user requests, using automated scripts to quickly identify the breaking point of the application. Option B. Immediately implement aggressive server-side caching configurations and database optimization techniques across all Domino servers hosting the application, without prior testing, to preemptively address potential performance issues. Option C. Focus solely on client-side XPage code optimization, assuming all performance issues are due to inefficient JavaScript or rendering, and deploy these changes directly to the production environment without server-side analysis. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive, phased impact assessment starting with profiling individual XPages and server resources during simulated peak load conditions in a dedicated testing environment, followed by controlled, monitored testing in production if necessary. Correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive, phased impact assessment starting with profiling individual XPages and server resources during simulated peak load conditions in a dedicated testing environment, followed by controlled, monitored testing in production if necessary. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where a critical business process, reliant on a custom IBM Lotus Domino 8. 5. 2 XPage application is identified as having potential performance bottlenecks. The challenge lies in determining the most appropriate method for assessing the impact of these potential bottlenecks on the application's overall functionality and user experience, without disrupting ongoing operations or introducing new risks. This requires a nuanced understanding of how XPage applications interact with the Domino server and the underlying data, and how to simulate realistic load conditions. The correct approach involves a controlled, phased impact assessment that prioritizes non-intrusive testing methods. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that the assessment itself does not negatively affect the production environment. It emphasizes understanding the application's behavior under various load conditions, identifying specific XPage components or server configurations that might be contributing to performance issues, and then proposing targeted solutions. This methodical approach minimizes risk and allows for accurate diagnosis. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement significant server-side configuration changes or to conduct aggressive, unmonitored load testing directly on the production environment. Such actions represent regulatory and ethical failures because they disregard the principle of least privilege and the responsibility to maintain system stability and data integrity. Uncontrolled changes can lead to data corruption, application downtime, and security vulnerabilities, all of which have significant compliance implications, especially concerning data availability and business continuity. Furthermore, performing unmonitored testing on a live system violates professional due diligence and could lead to unforeseen consequences for end users and the business. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. First, clearly define the scope and objectives of the impact assessment. Second, identify potential testing methodologies, prioritizing those that are least disruptive. Third, evaluate the risks associated with each methodology, considering potential impacts on performance, data integrity, and security. Fourth, select the methodology that offers the best balance of diagnostic accuracy and risk mitigation. Finally, implement the chosen methodology with strict monitoring and rollback plans in place.